Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football podcast for NFL Week 7. We got some bye weeks. We got some crazy injuries to account for. We've also got some trade movement that is going to change the landscape for some of these offenses around the league. Obviously, Devontae Adams and Amari Cooper on the move. So a ton to get to. Start the show. Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football podcast for NFL Week 7, the preview show. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That fine gentleman back in the saddle, my guy Mario Puig. We're going to break down every game on the slate expeditiously, get you everything that you need to know to set your lineups this weekend. Let's start things in the Big Easy, shall we, Mario? We've got the Saints and we've got the Broncos. The Saints are really the walking wounded right now. I've never seen quite as many mentions of one Bub Means as I have in the last 3 days as I did during the entirety of his collegiate career. I thought he tested well. I thought that he might be someone to keep an eye on as like a 6th, 7th round pick in the NFL draft, but not a whole lot more than that. And obviously Mason Tipton, who we talked about a little bit in the preseason, potentially getting some work this evening. But as it stands, because of the injury concern in New Orleans, on top of Carr being out as well, we have the Broncos as road favorites, 2.5-point favorites in this one. So what are we looking at from a fantasy angle here?
Not a whole lot, probably. Kickers in showdown, the single game slates, both those kickers seem pretty good in a game like this. But Pat Surtain being out for the Broncos, definitely a big deal. And I guess Damari Mathis might have been his replacement. Otherwise, he's questionable. So there might be something like a third string corner on the boundary for the Broncos. And I don't know. I'm interested in seeing how Memes does, but I don't know. I don't personally have any sense of what kind of player he is exactly. He has really low catch rates throughout his career, so that's something to keep an eye on. I personally am a little higher on Tipton even now, especially with Rattler being kind of, I think, mostly like a deep ball or nothing kind of quarterback. Tipton does have that downfield ability, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But this could be a game where just nobody really does a whole lot. I guess Kamara and maybe a guy like Sutton or Javonte a little bit, but there's just enough defensive competence on both sides of the game that you can imagine basically no one going anywhere for most of it.
Yeah, if you're throwing a showdown slate lineup together, I think your kickers and your defenses will be kind of building blocks for this one. Then just kind of throw some darts at some of the odd skill players in this one. Did you have any kind of lasting takeaways from Spencer Rattler from last weekend, relative to what you saw in college?
To be fair to him, it seems like he was practicing with the third team offense until just right before that game, 3 practices maybe that he had with any higher than the third unit. So he didn't have as much time to work with a guy even like Tipton as he did Means, so let alone the starters and whatever else. So maybe Rattler does a little better, but that was such an easy matchup. That Buccaneers defense, they did have Winfield back, I guess, to be fair, so that changed things. But corner personnel was quite bad. So Rattler, it's a little early, I think, to call him anything in particular. But if he doesn't do better in this game, then it's kind of like, not looking given his profile as a prospect is otherwise not great, in my opinion. If he can't get going with the production in a game like this, with Surtain being out, then it is kind of like, the benefit of the doubt starts to, wear away a little bit.
Absolutely. I think that Surtain absence does loom large, and yeah, it does kind of up the stakes, up the ante for Rattler and his ability to perform.
With Olave and Shaheed both being out, so it's like he's not toast. Rattler isn't. If he can't get going here, it's just you'd like to see a little bit more control than last week, given the short notice of the last game and the time that he's had since.
Exactly. We do have a listener question from the live stream. Trying to acquire Kyron Williams, would you give away either Jalen Hurts or Baker Mayfield to accomplish said goal?
If they take Mayfield, yeah, I'd do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure, especially in a 4-point passing touchdown league that I think Hurts would be worth
And if they're
giving away.
asking in the event that they don't accept Baker, if they're asking then should they offer Hurts? I don't know. It depends on how desperate you are at running back, but I think we've already seen Baker Mayfield can kind of lay some duds. It's he has his good games, of course, but uh, Hurts still should be safely the better fantasy quarterback, I think.
I think so as well. Let's get on over to Sunday. We've got the London game. We've got the Jags and the Patriots. Sorry to the football fans overseas having that as your treat this weekend. But we've got the Jags 5.5-point favorites. Similar or different sides of the same coin. Rattler makes his debut last week. Drake May makes his debut for the Patriots. What did you think of how he fared in that first game against the Texans?
I thought May was really good. It's just not totally surprising to me. If it had been like if May were more of a fringe prospect coming in and had a game like that, it'd be more of like a needle moving kind of detail. But I always thought May was really good, and I always thought putting Brissett on the field over May never had anything to do with merit. It was literally only to physically protect Drake May from that offensive line. That Houston pass rush is pretty nasty, so it was a really good showing given the circumstances, and it's safe to say Brissett is not capable of a game like May had against the Texans. Hopefully, for the Patriots, for May, this Jags defense is more accommodating. I don't know what the latest expectation is with Tyson Campbell, but particularly if Tyson Campbell is out again, this would be a really, really nice matchup for May. Interesting that Kayshon Boutte got going last week a little bit, if playing in basically the Tyquan Thornton previously role. If he can keep going a little bit, Demario Douglas obviously pretty good. This really could be a sustainable, not like high volume, not a truly frightening passing game for the Patriots, but still one that's literally maybe twice as good as what it was under Brissett. Just once the schedule gets tough in a couple weeks, it's looking a little bit more challenging for me.
So, but this week, I mean, I can certainly see the appeal, especially with bye weeks and injuries,
Yeah,
ravaging kind of our options. I think May kind of finds himself on the, streamable type of trajectory. I do feel better about Pop Douglas moving forward with
yeah.
Drake May back there. And yeah, it was great to see Kayshon Boutte, do something. I mean, it was a long time ago at this point, but he
He's
was
still really young.
he was going to be the guy at LSU. Like, he was the heir apparent to Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. And, he had the great freshman year, didn't really materialize much after that. And obviously hasn't much on Sundays either. But I mean, last week is a start.
He doesn't turn. Boutte doesn't turn 23 until May. And as far as Demario Douglas goes, recall how Josh Downs did when he and Drake May were both at North Carolina.
Pretty well. Josh Downs was carrying that passing game. Him and Drake May made some great music together. So if Douglas can slide into that type of rhythm with May, that's got to be extremely encouraging going forward. On the Jag side, what's catching your eye?
I don't know. The Jaguars are still what we were afraid they would be, and I don't think the Patriots, despite all their various issues in this game, one substantial loss on defense might be Marcus Jones if he's not active, slot corner for the most part, but impact player. So the Patriots, with that said, normally I think are pretty competent and even are capable of just outright good play on defense. They just their defense tends to get overwhelmed especially over the course of a game because they get left on the field for long drives. They get short fields to defend. They're out there often, not that many breaks, and they get overwhelmed over the course of the game. But the Jaguars are more, despite all their talent on offense, and I still think Trevor Lawrence is clearly very good. I just think the offense is not a serious one. I think it's like, just a completely out of their depths, both Doug Peterson and Press Taylor. But despite all their talents and whatever they might be capable of being theoretically, the Jaguars, in the meantime, can only do anything on offense against a defense that's sub NFL. They need to be going against guys who played in the preseason and aren't on even practice squads right now. Those guys need to play corner for the Jaguars to look good. And I just think Patriots defense versus Jags offense is Patriots win. So other than like Christian Kirk and Brian Thomas, I guess there's not really much I'm hoping for there. And even in both of their cases, I'm kind of maybe hoping some garbage time bails them out, because that's the way it's had to go a couple times this year.
No, exactly. It's rough in Jacksonville. I'm not sure that it gets much better this week against the Patriots. Before we move on over to the main slate for Sunday, we do have a message from our friends over at Underdog. We're proud to partner with Underdog Fantasy for the NFL season. Underdog is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. In addition to their popular best ball contest, Underdog offers great DFS pick'em games. Pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. You can win up to 1,000 times your money in a single night by picking between 2 and 8 players to build a pick'em entry. Taking a look-see at the RotoWire picks tool, very nifty. Definitely recommend checking that out if you haven't already. And we also have an app for that, so definitely worth checking that out. But got it filtered to Underdog. Some picks that they like this week. I got to rock with the lower on Sam Laporta. I don't feel like he's getting quite enough targets. I think the target share has dropped down to like 10%. It was like closer to 20 last year. So I'm going to take the lower on 43.5 receiving yards for him. I'm also going to take the lower on Kareem Hunt rushing yards, 49.5 against the 49ers. Sign up with RWNFL to claim your free pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with my promo code RWNFL to claim your free pick plus your first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Got to be 18 or older, 21 or older in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 or older in Alabama and Nebraska, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Are you concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. If you're in Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783 or text NEXT STEP to 53342. If you're in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. We also got a message from our friends over at the Blue Wire Network. And we're on to Sunday afternoon. We have the Seahawks and the Falcons. Over under 51 in this one. We've got the Falcons 3-point favorites. Seahawks coming off a bit of a lackluster performance a little bit a week ago, whereas the Falcons had a much easier time against the Panthers. What's the read here?
Well, Kirk Cousins, of course, looking a lot different the last 2 weeks. That's great to see. Some of it might be matchup related, but even if it was, I'm not sure the Seahawks right now are that frightening on defense. And I don't know what the latest is on Tariq Woolen or Trey Brown, but those two are their boundary starters at corner. They both were out of practice Wednesday. It looks like Anthony Bradford, who I thought was he right guard, missing practice. So Seahawks not exactly in great shape. They are somewhat, desperate to get their season on track. So maybe that urgency shows up. But meanwhile, it seems like the Falcons, the theory of their team of Kirk Cousins and all that it would mean to have that kind of quarterback upgrade. Now that, knock on wood, he's looking a little, more like himself the last 2 weeks. It seems like that whole thinking, just the almost, the leap of faith that we were taking back before the start of the season, it seems like it was on the mark, in which case I think the Falcons are kind of just the better team in general. And certainly if the injuries are included in the thinking, then I'm just not sure where the Seahawks get an obvious edge, although they're probably a team that the Falcons need to take seriously. I just think that if they take care of, the business, basically, they should be able to win it.
Is this going to be a week where Tyler Algier is worthwhile as a flex option?
That's always just a coin flip, truly a coin flip kind of thing, because he's always the same guy. He's always as good as he always is, and in my opinion, Algier is quite good. But the 18 carry game from last week, that's immediately following a 6 carries for 12 yards game the week before, and you were no more correct to start him in either case than the other, in my opinion. So you're just playing with fire every time. Sometimes it lands the way you want it to, but for what it's worth, that was the first time Algier had double-digit carries all year. It was twice as many as the previous high of 9 in week 2. So desperate situations, it can work out, but I don't think you want to start Algier, unfortunately, unless B. John is hurt, basically.
And then with the Seahawks, what is kind of their roadmap for success against this Falcons defense that's been pretty solid?
I don't know, honestly. I'm having trouble figuring out the Seahawks. Geno was weird in the last game. I guess you could give as much of that as credit to the 49ers, but it was a disappointing game because Geno did these things on tape before that game that gave you reason to say, like, oh, he's playing better than his numbers would make you think. And then if you just tuned into the 49ers game and none of the other ones, you'd be like, this guy sucks. So it's hard. It is still, I think, more the prior thing than the 49ers game thing. But if that is true, it still is the case. Like, Geno needs to kind of prove it with a good game here. And the Falcons don't really have any playmakers on defense aside from the safeties, in my opinion. But those guys are very good. So Geno has to avoid, the mistakes, and if he does, he offensive line concerns aside, he should be able to get some shots. Like, there's no reason to me why AJ Terrell should be so concerning for Metcalf and so on. So, but yeah, I just think the Seahawks deserve less of a benefit of the doubt at the moment, because we're still waiting on their theory of a team to show up even kind of one time, whereas the Falcons, it's like, yeah, it's only been 2 weeks and it was only against two pretty much not great defenses, but it's a start, and the Seahawks haven't even got that yet.
Yeah, it almost feels like Seattle's most impressive performance so far this year was a fairly convincing loss to the Lions. So they still.
I thought that game was a little closer than it looked, but yeah, that was the best they looked, and they lost.
So therein lies the conundrum, and they obviously got to go East Coast, 10 o'clock a.m. body clock time for them. Let's go Bills Titans. I think we have a pretty solid idea of what's going to happen here. The books have this one as Bills 8.5-point favorites, 9.5 at some shops. But I think you're the best person to ask about this. If you have James Cook, how concerned are you about the Ray Davis arrival from this past week?
To be fair, I'm probably the worst person to ask because I'm
it's open and shut. It's Ray Davis.
Biased. Well, it is. I admit it's not open and shut, but I am the person who's probably got like the most extreme opinion on it. It's like, to me, it's clear that Ray Davis is the better player, but obviously it doesn't matter what I think. It's Joe Brady. The Bills love James Cook. Clearly, they're not going to just put him on the bench, but at the very least, I think you might see Cook's carry share go down a little bit. And specifically, I think you're going to, if that does happen, it would be kind of like Ray Davis taking those Ezekiel Elliott carries that one year that Tony Pollard was really explosive, in part because Tony Pollard did not get those Ezekiel Elliott carries. He didn't have to deal with the halfback dives, and on 3rd and 1. It wasn't going to Tony Pollard on a halfback dive. It was going to Zeke, and you're maybe getting 1 yard there, and you're grateful if you do. So when it shows up as 1 yard for Ezekiel Elliott, no no one cares except to blame him for being a plotting running back. But when Pollard would only get the draws, only get the tosses, only get the counters, the yards per carry goes up because the expected yards per carry goes way up. Those situationally are plays that correlate to more yardage than halfback dives and short yardage situations. So you're going to maybe see the short yardage and like goal line kind of stuff, the power formation kind of stuff start tilting more toward Davis. But the draws, the outside runs, I think you'll still see Cook get those. It's just that might be limited to something like 11 or 12 carries per week rather than the 20 he was pushing.
Yeah, Cook was never, materialized as someone who should be getting like the 20 plus carries. He occasionally did well with them, of course, but I think it's better for the Bills offense overall to have that power element in Ray Davis, and it gives them a lot more options in the run game to attack the middle with Davis, go outside with Cook.
It lets Cook run harder too. Like he doesn't have to preserve his energy or like be careful about how fast he takes a corner if he knows Ray Davis is getting 30 snaps.
See, exactly. So this is a good thing for the Bills. And then I think additionally, and this is not a hot take, this is certainly not the first that any of our listeners have heard this, but I think the Amari Cooper trade is a bigger deal for Buffalo than Devontae Adams is for the Jets.
Oh, yeah, especially given where the two teams were starting at previously. Like the Jets, their problem has not really been wide receiver production. The Bills, it pretty much has been. It's as simple as like you can't have Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Mac Hollins combining for 60 snaps in a game or something. They still have Hollins playing way too much, but at least Cooper can get on. If maybe they should put Curtis Samuel on the shelf until his toe is actually healed. By the way, if Shakir can come back, he can be in the slot. Cooper can be the ZX, whatever they need him to be, and Hollins, if they must play him, can be a blocking dummy. And that would still be Coleman. They would ideally just put over Hollins. Like that has to happen soon. So yeah, big deal for Cooper too. Going from Watson to Allen. They could literally not practice going into the game, and it would still be an upgrade for sure. So Cooper, it helps a ton, obviously.
Yeah, I think I kind of steered a little bit clear of Cooper during draft season just because I was worried about the Browns offense. I should have galaxy brained it and thought, oh, well, the Browns are going to be bad enough to where they have to trade him to Josh Allen.
Yeah,
foolish on my part.
You should have guessed like Deshaun Watson will cause the Browns to go insolvent and liquidate all their assets, and he'll go to the best option, best offense actually.
I can't believe I didn't see that coming.
$100, please. Yeah.
As far as Dalton Kincaid is concerned, how big of a downgrade is this? I guess
it's just not happening. I don't know why they have Knox playing as much as they do. I don't know why they drafted Kincaid to do whatever they're calling this, the way they use their tight ends. But yeah, Cooper. So part of the reason I thought, even though I didn't really like the fit, the reason I thought that Kincaid would have big reception and target counts this year was just because, yeah, what else is it going to go to Hollins? Obviously not. Shakir, Samuel, even in theory, they have limitations. So Kincaid was the only way they could bridge that gap. And with Cooper there, that's just very much not the case anymore. And now, whereas before it was like they need to get Kincaid going to fix the offense, that isn't a true statement anymore. So it doesn't seem like there's any actual, impetus to get Kincaid the ball now.
Yeah. So I'm just going to kind of scroll past my best ball teams where I have Kincaid. It's not a ton, but yeah, I know that those are probably toast. Let's see. Before we let's keep going here. We were speaking about the Browns. Let's hit that game. We've got the Bengals going to Cleveland. Bengals 5.5. I feel like we're getting begged to take the Bengals in this spot. I mean, less than a touchdown against this Cleveland team. Cleveland obviously covered the big number a week ago against Philly, but I feel like that's almost more of an indictment of Philly than anything else. But I think this Bengals offense is really clicking. The defense is still an issue, but when your defense is bad, what's a good antidote for that? Playing the Browns.
Yeah. The Bengals defense may well be busted, but it's just Deshaun Watson. I don't know for sure. It's the shoulder at this point. Obviously, he had the karmic weight working against him either way, but it seems like his shoulder must just be if he was throwing, 92 mile per hour four-seamer before, now he's throwing a 75 or something, and he just understandably cannot function with such a situation. As long as that's the case, though, and as long as is it Haslam, the owner? As long as they're saying you have to start him, I gave him $1 billion guaranteed. Then it's just, why would they beat any team, let alone the Bengals, as you said, this Bengals team getting their offense on track. Be hard to screw it up. Maybe somehow the Browns cover, but it's optimistic, I think, to even see that much going well for them.
I do too. I think the Bengals are going to be able to, last week was it shined a bit of a light on the offensive line issues, but I think also the Giants might have a sneaky good defensive line. So, you take that for what it is. I know Myles Garrett's going to be on the other side with Cleveland, but I think as long as the line holds up for Cincy, I think it's, pretty much wheels up for the entirety of that offense from a fantasy perspective. Our guy Jacob has a trade question. He would be receiving Zay Flowers, and he would be giving away Brandon Ayuk and Isaiah Pacheco. So to me, I almost read this as Flowers for Ayuk straight up. I don't have much optimism for Pacheco the rest of the way. So if I'm Jacob in this situation and he kind of helps sweeten the deal, I don't know. I think I would try to offload him.
Yeah, I don't know how to call Flowers versus Ayuk. I think it is safe to say Ayuk's numbers improve over the course of the year, specifically the catch rate. The last 2 years, Ayuk's catch rate was right around like 70, 72, something like that percent. This year, he's only got 23 of 41 targets. So I think that will correct. The question maybe is, like, can you wait that long? And how long can you wait for Ayuk and Purdy to figure it out? Flowers has another good matchup this week against the Buccaneers. So if you wait this week, I think Flowers' price will only go up or at least stay the same. So I don't see the need to move him right now, if that's kind of the crux of it.
I think I would rather have Flowers rest of season.
Fair enough. Yeah, I would not argue against it.
He's been rocking out the last couple of weeks. And the two kind of dud games that he had were the ones that Derrick Henry just kind of put the game and completely changed the offense in like the first half. So Baltimore didn't have to throw it even 20 times in those games. And it's been more normal scripts the last couple of weeks. And, obviously Flowers has done extremely well. He was just feasting last week against Washington. He won't get Ben St. Juste covering him every week. So that is, something
that was the dream. That was so cool.
Oh man, I was eating that up. But beyond that, I do think that Flowers, as opposed to in Ayuk's case where there's still Debo and Kittle to be competing forward with targets, I think Zay, if Monken has a more pass happy script, I think Zay is the first guy that's getting the targets in that offense. So a little bit less competition for him, although, week to week, maybe a little bit lower, just overall passing volume projection. Before we get on to our next game, we've got a message from our friends over at DraftKings Pick 6.
We're proud to be brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6. So many NFL offerings each week over at Pick 6. Been enjoying playing on the Pick 6 platform each and every week of the NFL season. Think a certain quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards. How about your favorite receiver scoring a touchdown? Check out Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy football and win cash right now with DraftKings. Here's how it works. Just pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. Yards, catches, touchdowns, etc. Lock in those picks and compete against opponents for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code ROTOPICK. That's ROTOPICK. Again, ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. If you're a new Pick 6 customer, play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Just use that code ROTOPICK. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-89-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
And look at that. We are back. Big thanks to our friends over at DraftKings Pick Six, and big thanks to our guy, handsome Nick Whalen, for doing that ad read. I mean, textbook, putting me to shame on my own dang show. Moving on, we have the Texans and the Packers, one of several like really huge games this week. I mean, between this, we've got the Chiefs and the Niners and the Lions and the Vikings. A lot of good stuff going on this Sunday. But let's start in Green Bay. First of all, you see those uniforms that the Packers are going to be wearing?
No, I did not see Are they good?
They are good. They're not the brown ones or like blue and brown ones from days of yore. They are all white. They are very clean looking. So that's certainly a factor. But I don't know. I think I still like the Texans in this spot to keep it close. They're 3-point underdogs on the road here. But you know what's the pulse in this game?
There's a lot of injuries. It's hard to account for all of it at a glance. It's hard to tell how real some of these injuries are versus which ones these guys will shake off. But I think the Texans have had their depth tested by injuries quite a bit, and it's, in my opinion, tough for them. Assuming both teams are kind of on their game, I think it's as simple as the Packers can go for more punches, more rounds than the Texans can. The Texans, I think, need to more so kind of clinch the game somehow at a point where, early in the second half and kind of just sit on a lead at that point, because their secondary is kind of, the Houston secondary is kind of thin, I think. And if the Packers have, I guess they might not have Wicks in this one, but if Watson, Dobbs, Reed, and ideally Wicks are all there, then the Packers can kind of just force the Texans to put some guys on the field and cover receivers that they just should not be covering, and that the Texans didn't plan on having cover receivers of that caliber. The pass rush for the Texans is what bails out their defense. Willie Anderson, Danielle Hunter, but Jordan Love, things go wrong sometimes, of course, when he does it, but he always stands up against pressure and is not deterred by it in any way. So I don't know if you can get the Houston pass rush to Love reliably enough to protect those corners enough, give them enough cover fires they need. And it also helps for the Packers that this is in Green Bay rather than Houston, both because Green Bay just gets the obvious Lambeau effect, and because CJ Stroud, great as he is, in my opinion, he hasn't played as well on the road as he has at home. So I'll kind of lean Packers for that reason.
I think that's a smart and astute observation. When it comes to the Texans, did you have any big takeaways from last week's game against the Patriots? I mean, it kind of took them a little bit to get into gear. It was our first full game seeing them without Nico Collins for the foreseeable future. Did you have any kind of big fantasy takeaways from, the pass catching rotation, but they also, added Joe Mixon back into the equation?
Well, it's hard to tell how much the Patriots run defense is just straight up bad versus how much they might have been selling out against the pass in this game and leaving the run open to get beaten that way by Mixon and Pierce both. So the Texans went in with thin pass catching personnel. The Patriots were a tough matchup on paper as far as that went. So Stroud struggling to produce yardage was not exactly shocking. And indeed, given the run returns, it didn't really matter. But I feel like against the Packers, the Texans have a similarly tough matchup, not in terms of the corner personnel, but the Packers, maybe more than any team, have so many slot capable defenders between McKinney, Bullard, and even the Fresno State rookie Williams. They have a bunch of interchangeable personnel in the middle of the field, and if Jair can play, they're tough at one corner spot. It's always that other corner spot on the other side of the field that's the question. But with the Texans being thinned out with no Nico Collins, I don't know if the Texans can really make the Packers pay for that enough, especially to make up for the what I would say is a deficit with the Texans corners going against the Packers receivers.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting kind of like mirror image on either side, whereas the Packers have a ton of receiver depth, and the Texans, it's pretty thinned out.
Nico is huge. He's a top 5 receiver in the league, and good as Diggs and Dell are, it's just it's a huge loss they just cannot replace.
I got rug pulled in the fishbowl last week. I sat Kavonte Turpin, which usually doesn't matter in most leagues, but it's a league with return yards. And he had like 40 some odd fantasy points, and I started Xavier Hutchinson. That's going to cost me, I think, in the long run. So I'm still smarting from that. Let's go Indy, Miami. We've got Indy 3-point favorites. Anthony Richardson, I think, is going to be back in the fold here. Jonathan Taylor, I don't believe, was practicing as of Thursday, however. Dolphins coming off the bye. Do you think McDaniel came up with anything that can make this offense go?
Maybe, but to me, there's only one thing the Dolphins can do that they haven't already been trying, and that's just get Jonnu Smith the ball down the seam. I feel like it's such an obvious thing, have Jonnu Smith take all those snaps that were going to Julian Hill, change the formation structure if you must, but you have a thing with Tyreek and Waddle doing all this, cross the field, middle of the field stuff. Put Jonnu Smith in the slot then, a place where you are otherwise getting no productivity at all. And instead of having it be a useless block for a run that doesn't go very far, have Jonnu out there who's a good blocker still, probably a better blocker anyway than Hill and whatever else. But have Jonnu Smith run, like flag routes and post routes or just whatever else in the slot that the defense might be conceding with the looks they've been giving you. And that's something they can go to until the defense lets Tyreek or Jalen Waddle slip open again. Whereas the way they've been running things is just drop back, pray that one of those two receivers gets open, because if they don't, nobody else is, because the tight ends are Julian Hill and Durham Smythe, and then they just kind of the play ends. That's just how it goes over and over. So Jonnu at least gives them a theoretical new, vein to tap into, and I hope they keep going to it because I think it'll work. But McDaniel seems understandably a bit overwhelmed at the moment, so I don't really have a whole lot of faith in that team.
And then, the obvious question that needs to be answered when it comes to Indianapolis, the move from Flacco to Richardson, what does that do for your Indianapolis interests as far as the pass catchers go?
With the way they're running the offense now, and given the absence of Jonathan Taylor, I hate to say, I think Flacco is clearly the better fit for this offense. I don't know why you would take Richardson and give him the personnel that doesn't suit him, or rather call a game plan that doesn't suit him, which is to say they give the same game plan for Richardson as they do Flacco. It's like, no, you got to go like more big personnel, more Chip Kelly, less Mike Leach, more like of all screwed up things, what Cliff Kingsbury is doing in Washington. You don't by design throw it 30 times. You throw it over 30 times if you have to, but by design, you live on the ground and you make your big plays from the ways you leverage that. But they don't have the ground game part of the theory because Taylor's not out there, and they have a bunch of nobodies at running back otherwise. And it already doesn't suit Richardson to pick up the slack by throwing the ball. So I don't know. I think it's in a tough spot for him. Two bad teams. I don't know which one fails faster here.
I still got to lean that Miami fails a little bit faster. It feels like without Tua, like it's really, really rough scene. Let's go Lions Vikings. Another awesome game this weekend. We've got the Vikings 1.5 point favorites at home.
Yeah, so brutal with the Hutchinson injury. It really takes a lot from the Lions, even though they're still a team no one wants to play right now. That just changes the complexion of the defense. So those corners at the very least are going to have to cover a little bit better, which you don't want to as a corner here right before you go against Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. So if Hawkinson I don't know anything about whether Hawkinson realistically can come back here, but if he does, it's easy enough to see why that would make the Vikings passing offense better, the whole offense better. And if that happens in this game, in time for this game, that would of course be poor timing for the Lions.
Yeah, this one is the Hutchinson injury. I think is going to have some pretty big downstream effects on this Lions team. Vikings coming off the bye, the Lions coming off like the big emotional win in Dallas. I do kind of side with Minnesota here the more I think about it, and that's even without even factoring in a Hawkinson return potentially. I do like the Vikings in this spot. Let's go Eagles, Giants. Eagles 3-point favorites on the road.
Yeah, knock on wood, it looks like Malik Neighbors should be back for this game. So it'll be interesting to see how that Giants offense settles in for the long haul. When they have all of Neighbors, Slayton, and Wan'Dale Robinson, they should coexist well in theory. Of course, Neighbors still being the target hog as soon as he's back, and including in this game. So Daniel Jones is again on the clock. If he can play well here, he buys himself some more leash. He has a way of disappointing when people get their hopes up with him and then still doing a little better right when you think he's about to be finished off. So I don't know where we're at in the big trajectory with Jones, but the expectations are higher now that Neighbors is back.
Yeah, no question about that. I mean, Neighbors, prior to going out with that concussion, was one of the best receivers production-wise in the league. As far as the Eagles are concerned, how are they going to attack this Giants defense?
I don't know. Both because I can't tell what the Eagles. I guess if the Eagles are just going to kind of do the same thing they've been doing the past few years on offense, then that is what it is. What I have more trouble figuring out is what the Giants defense can be. They have some players who are really good. Dexter Lawrence isn't missing time, is he? Because I see he's on here with a hip injury. He's their best player. But basically, the Giants, if they get improvement from their corner personnel relative to the first month, then in theory their defense could be pretty tough. Like I guess the run defense is the remaining question, and I guess Saquon revenge game. It would be a bad time for the Giants for it to turn out. Actually, yeah, your run defense isn't that great because Saquon probably gets a chance to get going in this game and probably will. If Lawrence is out, that's just kind of like sim to next week kind of thing for the Giants.
I think so as well. Rams, Raiders.
I'll take the Rams, John. The Raiders they're not a serious team. They got Telescoed. Antonio Pierce got Telescoed. Also sim to next. Brock Bowers is doing really well, but sim to next season nonetheless.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, he's about it. I mean, does the Adams departure, now that it's official, does that elevate anyone else in this passing game, or is it just more Bowers?
Well, Myers, I don't know what the latest is with his concussion that he missed with last week, but Trey Tucker is pretty much just kind of like a gadget player, in my opinion. More targets is more targets, but I think with a guy like him, you can't even assume there will be more targets. There's just kind of the chance there will be more targets. But if Myers can get healthy, then he is a 10 target per game kind of player for them, I think.
Okay, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Before we get over to our next game, we've got a message from our friends at Circa. It's football season, and the best place to catch the games is at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas, featuring the best pool in history, Stadium Swim. 3 levels, 6 pools, and a 143-foot diagonal screen. Whether it's Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, Stadium Swim is America's favorite place to watch football. No matter the size of your group, Stadium Swim is the place for you. From owner suites to cabanas, day beds to stadium booths, there are seating choices for everyone. And the best part, Stadium Swim is open 365 days a year. With temperature-controlled pools, it's a great place to catch the games all season long. Stadium Swim, located at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Book today at circalasvegas.com. Panthers, Commanders. In this particular instance, I mean, we're seeing the Commanders 8-point favorites at home in this spot. The Panthers, they got the initial bump after they moved off of Young for Andy Dalton, but it's come back to earth a little bit. But some interesting kind of moving parts there. Deontay Johnson a little bit dinged up with his ankle. What are you seeing here?
Well, the Raiders matchup was, of course, the easiest of those 4 games that Dalton has started until this matchup against Washington. So it's not as if Dalton, especially if Deontay Johnson isn't there and himself, it's not as if you're projecting Dalton for a big game here. But I think he gets at more around 7 or more yards per attempt than the 5.8 or less he's been 3 weeks in a row. the Washington defense still is not very good, and I don't know. I guess you'd be right to point out just the same that the Panthers don't have pass catchers. Leggett, I think, has something there. I don't know much about Coker. Jonathan Mingo's pretty much toast, but I do think that the Panthers should be able to move the ball. The question, I guess, would be how much or at all does the Panthers defense hold up against the Washington offense? And there's not a whole lot going on for the Panthers defense. Even someone like J.C. Horn has not been, a big deal. There's not much impact. There is no impact in that defense. So if Washington struggles here, it would be because they kind of, sleepwalked into it, or we're looking ahead to next week or something.
Yeah, they can't, afford to look past anybody. But if they were
Maybe
going,
this one
we were
time.
going to. So I think that they have a big game on the other side of this one against the Bears, but I think that they will be able to take care of business. But I see them more so winning by like a touchdown than covering the 8.5. Got a few more here. We've got the Chiefs and the 49ers. I think Juju Smith-Schuster is who I want to talk about the most from this game, because I basically couldn't believe what I was seeing from him a couple of Monday nights ago. And I think that, given the Rice injury, we know that Smith, his knees, the proverbial ticking time bomb and everything like that, but they need a reliable target. And he's not going to do exactly what Rice was doing, but I think, he's certainly rosterable now.
Yeah, rosterable. I don't know that I believe in him all the same. We know that he's functioning at a lower physical level than in the past. It's not like the Patriots, blacklisted him for some reason. It's like they wanted him to be good and he wasn't there. He couldn't create any separation. And there in New England, there was no space because the offense was so poor, unable to create space. With the Chiefs, that's not the same concern. And obviously, he and Patrick Mahomes have some kind of mutual understanding about how to maneuver these broken play type things. But those plays against the Saints were not him beating the defense. It was more like the defense had to spend a long time covering, and he kind of slipped open a little tiny bit. And if it wasn't for 2 or 3 big plays, especially where the defense was just kind of absent after the catch, people might more so remember Smith for dropping that interception at the goal line that Paulson Adebo got a hold of. So, and also the 69 snaps before that, Juju only drew 3 targets. So we'll see. The sample is going to get bigger. Something we'll have to correct one way or another.
Okay. All right. Maybe I was a little over my skis then. And then
Maybe not. I mean, like I said, those broken plays, he's working with Mahomes more than anybody else, at least.
Yes. So that's something to remember, but maybe hold off on starting him unless absolutely necessary this week. And then how does this Niners offense stack up against a tough and now rested Chiefs defense?
It seems like the 49ers are rolling in their own right. The impending return of McCaffrey aside, they have things, I think, pretty much optimized. Ayuk would ideally get going a little bit here, but if he doesn't, it seems like Debo and Kittle, of course, can pick up the slack. So I'm not too worried about the 49ers offense here.
Okay. All right. I think this could be like under the 47.5, but I think you'll be sweating that one out. The whole way.
The Chiefs don't want to shoot it out. They don't have they can't give Kelsey 25 targets, or I guess they could try that, but that's what they'd have to do something like that to keep up with a full Arsenal 49ers shootout.
Yeah. And so the defense is going to need to carry the Chiefs a little bit in that spot. Our guy John has a super chat for us. Much appreciated there, John. He wants to know, would you start the Saints defense or the Cincinnati defense? So both good options here. You got Bo Nix on the road if you're taking the Saints, or Cincinnati against Cleveland. Cleveland they don't score over 20 points ever. So I might lean Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's hard to get this one right in the sense that they're both really good setups. I would actually kind of lean the Saints, but I am just kind of flipping a coin in my head. Sorry.
I think, either way, you're starting top 8, maybe top 10 defenses for this week. And then a quarterback question, Daniel Jones or Sam Darnold this week. I think it's Darnold, but I don't know if this is his best game. But I do think that Hutchinson injury will, give him a little bit more time back there.
Yeah, I'd go Darnold. Jones is fine, but it looks like Carlton Davis is kind of against the clock to play in this game too. So especially if he's out, Darnold having a full assortment of weapons with the Detroit losing in the pass rush, emotional game, last week too, or not emotional, but they're at risk for some kind of hangover, being on the high they've been.
I think so as well. All right, Sunday nighter, we got Jets Steelers. Initial thoughts on Devontae Adams if he plays?
You start him, but it's not that exciting in my opinion. The matchup is tough. It would be really funny if the Jets also lost this game, in like Tyler Conklin dropped a pass or something, and Rodgers is like, fire him, trade for whatever, somebody. But anyway, I'll take. The Wilson thing is interesting. I think Russell Wilson, if he's healthy, can be a big improvement for Pickens. But the Jets, they need to like keep Rodgers from just like throwing the ball too many times in this game, because the Steelers defense can make you pay if you indulge hubris at all.
Right. You can't have him like taking these deep drops over and over again. TJ Watt will find you and take you to the ground with ferocity. The Russ detail, it does elevate those pass catchers. What do you think it does? What do you think it does to the run game?
It can't hurt it, because what the Steelers need is to extend more drives more predictably, more reliably, with fewer cold stretches in between. And if you can accumulate field position, if you can gain traction, gain leverage over the course of a game, that makes it easier to lean on your running game, because you specifically go to the running game to kind of press that tension on the defense and against the clock. So I think Wilson can only help, because as long as Wilson is an improvement as a passer, I think it can only help. I guess it also could help because Wilson isn't going to run as much as Fields, and so if there's carries to be given out, there's a lesser share accounting for Wilson.
That's what I was thinking. Less QB runs, should distribute the volume a little bit better to Warren and Harris. Let's get to the Monday night doubleheader. Ravens Bucks. Ravens 3.5-point favorites down in Tampa.
This is interesting, and the Ravens have to get better results out of their pass defense. I don't know why the results haven't been better to this point, but as long as you don't let those, Evans and Godwin go crazy, I think the Ravens can kind of have a mid-grade performance on their part and still take care of business.
Yeah, I think with the Ravens, like going against a Bucs defense that, obviously got shredded by Atlanta and, gave up the big letdown quarter against New Orleans. I think we've seen the last couple of weeks where a defense will maybe like try to load up to stop Derrick Henry, and then Lamar Jackson, I think, is playing some of the best football of his career as a passer. So, that just makes the offense so multiple and so scary. So I think there's that element, whereas on the Bucs side, I don't trust their ability to run. I suppose from a fantasy perspective, Sean Tucker does his thing last week. If Rachaad White gets back, what's your read on this run game? I don't expect it to do much, period, Monday night, but just kind of going forward with Tucker and Bucky Irving kind of emerging, and Rachaad White maybe getting Wally pipped a little bit.
Well, it also might be Irving getting a little Wally pipped, which was kind of the thing that went fully unaccounted for when people are naming him as like a zero running back pick, which is like, yeah, he is next up behind White, but not to take everything White had previously. There's Tucker there. Tucker is bigger and faster, has a lot of the same skill set elements, was probably as good of a prospect or better out of Syracuse. You have to assume that if White is not there, then Tucker is to some extent. And when he has a game like last week, it's the worst case scenario for Irving and for White, because, any of the three is liable to get the ball now. But It's bad for white investors. We'll see how good it is for urban investors. But Tucker might be the best of those three guys. That's something people believed 3 years ago, and then sometimes those things come back,
Yeah, sure. Tucker was a beast at Syracuse, and obviously had the anonymous rookie season. But I thought it's cool to see him do what he did a week ago in New Orleans. But I think fantasy managers are really dealing with the conundrum. They want to start any of these guys that they have rostered, obviously, after a game like last week, but I just don't see it happening against the Ravens defense. The Ravens defense,
and I need to see White be healthy, because at the very least, you need to see him healthy again, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he can't be completely, taken out of the picture. He is useful as a pass catcher, if nothing else. And then finishing it out, we got the Chargers and the Cardinals. Chargers 2-point favorites on the road.
Yeah, I hate the Cardinals offense, the theory of it anyway, because they're committing that sin of using their workhorse wide receiver as their main vertical threat. And all that means is you're guaranteeing that the defense places its entire bracket on the top of a defense on that guy. It's necessarily true. And Michael Wilson, meanwhile, is not like he would ideally have some space made for him to work the intermediate, not be also pressed himself on the other side. So the field ends up being very small. Sometimes James Conner can run through what's there anyway. Sometimes he can't. But when he can't, they just have nothing. Unless Harrison's dusting the double teams that he gets in every single play. So I like the way that the Chargers are set up here. I think they're just a team that's run better than the Cardinals, and Justin Herbert, if he gets going at all, the Chargers become quickly much more dangerous than we're assuming in the month of September.
Yeah, I think that this could be a good run from the Chargers going forward, but they need to have this one against Arizona. Still got a couple days on this one, so it's going to be kind of tricky to make your lineup calls. But as of Thursday, Marvin Harrison Jr. was still wearing the non-con jersey in practice.
Yeah, that's grounds for maybe benching Kyler if Harrison is not active this week. Not that you should necessarily do it, but Greg Dortch is not carrying that offense. You need Murray to run if Harrison isn't out there.
Yeah, and you could see things really kind of go sideways for Arizona if there is no Harrison. And again, the Monday night wrinkle here, you're out of pivots kind of if you play the waiting game. So pay close attention to the injury report coming in on Saturday. That's going to do it for us here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Big thanks to our friends at Underdog, over at DK Pick 6, and over at Circa. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.